Ladies and gentlemen, this is El Cochino, Tom Lawler, and I'd like to welcome you to the podcast that puts the lotion on its own skin, LuchaWorld. Bitchin'.
Welcome everyone to the LuchaWorld Podcast, episode number 123. Fredo Esparza here, and this week we are going to look back at the career of Bobby Lee, look forward to the Triplemania lineup coming up on December 12th, just talk about some of the recent CMLL news, including a wrestler changing his name, a new faction being formed, and another tournament happening in CMLL in the month of December. That's something we are enjoying. All that you could get, you could get all these tournaments for a reasonable price on Ticketmaster Live. And it's actually not that bad of a price if you have like $20, I think it's less than $20, somewhere in the $15 range or so. That's not that bad, but I think it would be so much better if the quality that they were offering was so much better. It's not so much the price. I think it's actually the quality of what's actually on the shows that's really kind of making it difficult for a lot of people to order those. So we'll be talking about that in a bit. But before that, I should talk about the LuchaWorld Patreon, which is available on patreon.com/LuchaWorld. Lucha Magazine write-ups. You have Lucha Classica podcast, the Retro Wrestling podcast. And, right now there's more focus on magazine write-ups just because I kind of want to get through that as quickly as possible. And it's kind of hard to do the Lucha Classica or the other podcasts because those require research as well. And right now I'm kind of like doing a lot of writing, not just with the Lucha Magazine write-ups, but also with the two websites I have. Not to mention the YouTube channel. So there's a lot of work that I'm doing that goes beyond the Patreon page. As I get through some of the magazines, I think I'll start doing you'll see a little bit more of a monthly type of situation with the podcast. But for the time being, the Lucha Classica podcast kind of comes, every so often. I think the Blue Panther podcast episodes I did two in less than 6 weeks. So there was a little bit more of just because that's something that I want to do, and there's a little bit more of it's easier to have done that than do someone specific, and then I have to do a lot of research and all that. So as we go along, it'll kind of like start evening it out as the weeks, months, years go on. That's available at the $3 reward tier. At the $5 reward tier, you get an added bonus reward, which is you get DVDs, 10 DVD titles each month. The month of December, there's actually going to be a big one. That's a big set that I'm going to post. That'll be coming up next week. So definitely check those out. The DVDs are converted to ISO files, so you just have to convert them you get a software program that actually converts that, and then you're able to get DVDs out of it. You could either burn them onto a DVD or keep them on a hard drive in that DVD format, or if you want, you could turn them into an MP4 or MKV or whatever format you want. You could do that as well. All I'm doing is providing that, which and you could do whatever you want with them. It's fine with me. So that's something available for the $5 reward tier. So, I would say I also have a $1 reward tier where you get a couple of free stuff on there, including the Retro Wrestling podcast. I think there's about 6-7 podcasts available on that, because I did put a Lucha Classica podcast available on for that as well. That's kind of more of a sampler type of thing if you want to test it out, see if you like it. But like I said, I think if you're a Lucha fan, the $3 reward tier is the one that's really the one you should go for. And like I said, if you're a DVD collector or you want to watch a lot of wrestling shows, not just Lucha Libre, but other stuff from Japan and mostly from Japan and from Mexico, then you go to the $5 reward tier. I mean, for $5, I mean that's I think if you've signed up to that, I started in January, so if you signed up from that point to now, $60, you've probably gotten you've gotten 120 different DVD titles, and you're going to end up getting about maybe like 200 DVDs total, just because there's a lot of that are two sets, or they're split into sets. that's kind of like the cool feature out of that as well. Anyway, just check that out if you're really interested. And a lot of the money from Patreon continues to support the website. Like I said, even like just writing the Bobby Lee bio obit, that takes up a lot of time. And thanks to the people who support us through Patreon, I'm able to do that, do a lot of bios and stuff. So that's about it for Patreon. We could start talking about Bobby Lee, who passed away on November 26, 2020. Real name, Carlos Alvarado Gonzalez. He actually goes back. He was born on April 15th, 1950 in León, Guanajuato. And he actually started wrestling in 1973 in his hometown of León. The Bobby Lee look, the mask, the gear, he chose green because that actually represents the football team in León, Club León. I found that out on he did an interview actually, and that's where I found out about that. I know there was I'm guessing whoever did the write up, there's somebody else who did a write up on Bobby Lee recently from Mexico. I think it's the newspaper Soul magazine or newspaper, and they talked about that. But that's where I found it before that. Bobby Lee actually did an interview, and he talked about where he got the mask and all that. And he actually used the color for the previous character that he did was El Gallo del Bajío. That was a character he did before he became Bobby Lee. He made his debut as El Impacto on September 14, 1973 in León, Guanajuato. Then he later on changed his character to what I said, El Gallo del Bajío. He later teamed up with Gallo Tapado and changed his name again, but this time not instead of dropping the Gallo, he just dropped the Bajío and became Gallo Tapado Dos. As a tag team, they traveled and worked in Jalisco and then moved to Mexico City, where Bobby Lee, at the time known as Gallo Tapado II, decided to join Promociones Mora, UWA. And that's where he got the Bobby Lee name. Promociones Mora wanted Alvarado to wrestle under a new mask and identity. And at that time, Hector Valero, who worked for, who was the magazine editor for Halcón and Combates magazines, he was actually one of the people who would come up with different characters. A lot of the magazine editors would come up with characters, as you know. Mil Mascaras was somebody that they came up with, and other names and so Valero came up with the Bobby Lee name because at the time Promociones Mora wanted a wrestler using the name Bobby on their roster because they had actually noticed that there were a lot of Bobbies from the past in Lucha Libre, like Bobby Areola, Bobby Bonales, and Bobby Segura, and there were other Bobbies that they would bring up, and so he came up with Bobby Lee. The name itself actually comes from they registered both Bobby Lee and Robert Lee or Roberto Lee. The name comes from Bruce Lee's brother Robert Lee. That's where they got the name. At least that's what Bobby Lee claims. Which I would believe to be true, just because Bruce Lee was such a big star, and anybody at that time wanted to find a way to connect the Bruce Lee name into something, or the Bruce Lee persona into Lucha Libre. As you see during that time period, you also see a lot of the karate gimmicks like Kung Fu, Kato Kung Lee, Black Man later on. You have a lot of these wrestlers who kind of get that character from the popularity of Bruce Lee. Bobby Lee being another one that kind of got that. And a lot of people talk about Bobby Lee's style. He was a high fly, a very athletic wrestler. He was technical, very athletic, a high flyer. A lot of people talk about his style at that time. And when they came up with the character, I think that was the one thing that he got, the advantage he got was that Francisco Flores was so motivated to make this a name for the promotion that he decided whatever Bobby Lee was going to want to do, he was going to kind of agree to, or at least give him an opportunity, to succeed or fail doing it. And of course, Bobby Lee decided he wanted to face the biggest star possible in Lucha Libre, and he wanted to challenge that man. And of course, that was at that time El Santo, who was the biggest star. At that point in time, El Santo was already a much older wrestler. I think he was in his late 50s by this point in time. So he was already somebody that was kind of already starting to, I think he might have even been in the 60s, honestly. So, he was kind of already starting to, his career was starting to wind down. But one of the things that they wanted to do was they wanted to create a star the same way that EMLL had done back when UWA was formed in 1975, and they took all this talent, became independent wrestlers, and left to work for Francisco Flores and Promociones Mora. That caused EMLL to develop, to create their new stars. And of course, the first guy that they really wanted to make into their next big superstar was Paraguayo. And so who was Paraguayo's big opponent? Of course, that was El Santo. So a lot of the what they did was they modeled very similarly to what happened with Paraguayo. Obviously, you can't follow it, all exactly, because Paraguayo by that point in time in 1975 was already a big name in Guadalajara and was already going to be a big star in Mexico City. With or without El Santo, he was going to be a big star. But just the fact that he got to work with Santo, that kind of catapulted him into the next stratosphere of Lucha Libre stars a lot quicker than he probably would have. And it kind of made him into this huge legend, this huge star already, who was still in his prime at that point in time. That was kind of what they wanted to do with Bobby Lee. So Bobby Lee gets, the first thing they do, obviously, they send him around, to get him some experience under the character and to build him up with the fans. So they send him to Guadalajara, then they send him to Chihuahua. Ciudad Juarez really is where he ends up becoming the star. Starts teaming up with Flama Roja, and who was a huge star in Juarez in the 70s and 80s. So he ends up getting the huge mask match win over Los Tigres del Ring. Then that follows up him going to the main home base of UWA wrestling in the state of Mexico, or in Mexico City as well. So of course he challenges El Santo, and he didn't just challenge El Santo. He was very, very pretty much a trash talker, just trashing him, calling him La Momia de Plata, saying that El Santo was too old. He also took shots to a lot of the older wrestlers as well, like Blue Demon, and whoever else was, Karloff Lagar, or anybody else who was kind of an older wrestler. He was going to trash them, but he focused more on El Santo. So he wins the big mass tag match. The first thing he does, now being in Mexico State or Mexico City, is he has this he gets the shot at Solar for the UWA World Welterweight title, which he wins on July 16th, 1978 at the Plaza de Toros. This was in Monterrey, though. That was another one of their big venues, Monterrey, and that's kind of like the big deal. If you win a big match in Monterrey, Mexico City, around the surrounding area of Mexico City, Mexico State, or in Tijuana, that basically starts building you up. He wins that big title match. Solar at that point in time was already a really excellent wrestler, so that kind of tells you that the value of that match. And so he wins that title, and he continues to trash El Santo publicly. El Santo's response was always just Bobby who. He didn't know who he, kind of like playing it up like, I've never heard of this young, this punk calling me out. And so magazines started calling that the possibility of a big mass match between these two as El Día del Juicio Final, the day of the final judgment. So they were kind of already building it up in the magazines. So he wins that match. So then that follows up with another big mass match where he teams up with Villano Tercero to beat Los Escorpiones 1 and 2 for their mask on August 13th, 1978. Los Escorpiones unmasked as Benny Romero and Raul Reyes. Raul Reyes was a veteran, a top star in Lucha Libre at that point in time. So, he gets a big win over those guys. After beating Los Escorpiones, he continues to trash, Bobby Lee continues to trash El Santo, and, this continues to build up their feud. And El Santo finally agrees to a match, but he wants it to be for the UWA World Welterweight title. And during that, he said he tells Bobby Lee that if he wins that match, then it's over. He doesn't have to have a mass match. But if Bobby Lee is able to retain that title, they will have a match. And of course, Bobby Lee ends up winning. And after the match, El Santo agrees to the mask versus mask match. The big mask match happens on September 3rd, 1978. This really only happened, the cool thing about this is like Bobby Lee's run was from July all the way through September. So you're talking about a 3-month period where he was just having a bunch of, big matches. That kind of tells you how big this was. So the big mask match happens on September 3rd, 1978 at the Palacio de los Deportes, and El Santo defeats Bobby Lee in the mask match, revealing, of course, for the first time, the face of Carlos Alvarado Gonzalez. There was a controversial finish where El Santo applies the camel clutch on Bobby Lee, but one of Bobby Lee's legs, it's kind of underneath the bottom rope. So there's people who think that he didn't actually lose because that should have led to a break, but the referee didn't see it. And Bobby Lee kind of didn't complain about it. He did complain about it, but it wasn't this, like he was going to accept that he lost. So he dropped the mask. But because of the way it ended, the controversial finish where he kind of thought that the match should have continued, that led to the big mask versus hair match where, Bobby Lee ends up losing again. And this happened on September 24th, 1978, again in the Palacio de los Deportes. And only this time Bobby Lee loses because he gets disqualified for refusing to break a submission hold on El Santo. So that pretty much was the big thing. And they actually continued. They took this feud throughout the circuit, the Promociones Mora circuit. So you're going to get that, that match in Monterrey, in Juarez, in Tijuana, all these different places. So that became the big thing throughout 1978. At the same time, Bobby Lee was still the UWA World Welterweight Champion, and he actually held that throughout the year. He held it almost to a year where he actually had successful title defenses against El Santo, Brazo de Oro, Solar, Estrella Blanca, Lobo Rubio, and Gran Amara. That's a pretty freaking good group of challengers, honestly, because you have Lobo Rubio, who is really one of those guys who was just being groomed as a next superstar. There's one of the upcoming Lucha Magazine write-ups we'll be focusing on him and Signo's rise in UWA, which I think the magazine's from 1978. Yeah, it actually is from that time period, 78, because that's where I actually got some of the information for one of the stories. And then there's also Estrella Blanca, who was he was somebody who was already getting a lot of raves early in his career. So he, at this point in time, he was already an established wrestler that was really, really a well-respected star. Brazo de Oro, another one, barely starting out, a young up-and-coming wrestler that, at a very young age was very, they were talked about as a promising future superstar in Lucha Libre. Bobby Lee would eventually lose his title to El Signo on June 24th, 1979 in Tijuana. He did win a couple of hair matches afterwards, but really by that point he was already, once you become a star, you kind of just you're kind of grouped in with everybody else who's kind of like a star. Every so often somebody will get a big push, but it's kind of like you see the system like in wrestling where once you're a star, you kind of stay at the top. The thing with UWA is that their lineups were so loaded that you could be somebody like Solitario, and you might actually work an opening match because the main event has like Connect versus Ricky Choshu, and then you might have like Paraguayo versus Fishman on the undercard, and then like a Misioneros versus Villanos match, and then like the women in between somewhere mixed in there. But sometimes you would get like Doral Dixon working an opening match. That kind of tells you how deep UWA's roster was, especially when they were doing 5-match lineups for the Palacio de los Deportes or El Toreo. They were really going to have like this. So even if you were working an opening match, you were still somebody who was very valuable in the promotion. They had different tiers where the younger guys who maybe were getting experience or weren't like the big stars, they would work the independent shows that were kind of like the group. They would have like maybe the Viano 3, Signo, younger guys working the main events on those cards, and then they would like have some other guys that would work the undercard afterwards. But yeah, he was pretty much a star from that point forward. He did in 1981 go to New Japan Pro Wrestling. And one of the things I didn't mention on my obit is that, but Dave Meltzer mentioned it in his For the Observer newsletter, was that he did work California, Los Angeles. A lot of the guys, when they would work New Japan or worked in Mexico, they would actually end up staying in California for a while. In Los Angeles, they would work a couple of shows there, and then they would travel to Japan, or vice versa. If they were coming in from Japan, they would wrestle a match in the United States, then go over to Mexico. So he got to do that. But in New Japan, it was said he was asked to wrestle in Japan at the request of Tiger Mask, who recalled seeing him wrestle in Mexico. Tiger Mask was at that time wrestling in Mexico as Satoru Sayama in the late 70s, and he actually got to work a lot of the bigger names in Mexico at that point in time. And he worked Mexico, then he went to England, and then he went to Japan and became Tiger Mask and became this huge sensation. So he was somebody that Tiger Mask requested, and the thing was that New Japan wanted him to be masked. So they wanted him to wear the same mask that he lost to El Santo, which was the Bobby Lee mask, but they changed the name. They changed it to the Masked Hurricane. So he wrestled as that in Japan for a bit, and actually lost that mask to Tiger Mask on October 8th, 1981 in Tokyo, Japan. There was some talk that Francisco Flores wasn't very pleased with what Bobby Lee did, where he wore the mask again, and so that leads to the story of how he retired. There's actually rumors that there was a shoot between him and Viano One at a gym owned by Felipe Hamlee, and that from the shoot, that's where he suffered the injury and just couldn't continue wrestling. Bobby Lee didn't mention anything about it being a shoot. It could have been that, where they actually had because you train in that. It's hard to describe, because a lot of times people think shoot is somebody actually getting into a real fight and stuff, but a shoot can be them just being a legitimate wrestling, not lucha libre, but actually being wrestling, Greco-Roman or amateur wrestling, and him maybe suffering an injury like that. But what he said was, what happened was that he landed on his back on the floor from a bump that from Viano Primero. That actually hurt his hip and several vertebrae on his back, and pretty much from that point forward he was dealing with pain. I think he continued wrestling on and off for a while afterwards. He was actually the referee, one of the referees for Santos' last match at El Toreo de Cuatro Caminos on September 12th, 1982, kind of like connecting everybody who was a big part of El Santos' career towards the end. That was part of UWA at that time, because you had, of course, the Misioneros and Paraguayo as the opponents, and then you had Santo teaming up with Solitario, Gory Guerrero, and I think Huracan Ramirez was the other one, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, pretty much that was his, I would say early 80s was when his career kind of came to an end. And he kind of went from being a pro wrestler, he started promoting in León, Guanajuato, his home. And he also worked for the commission in that area as well. He actually was the local promoter for AAA at the Domo de la Feria. And later on, he actually had a a three-way hair match with Tirantes and Copete Salazar. I'm trying to remember if that was like Tirantes's. Well, actually, that would be if it was in. I can't remember if that was in León. If it was in León, it was definitely Bobby Lee promoting it. And if it was in Jalapa, I'm guessing it was Tirantes promoting it. But yeah, I think that's the thing. Like with Bobby Lee, there was also the story. I didn't put this at my bio just because I found it I couldn't find where that story came from. But Dave Meltzer posted it, where he said that a lot of WWE wrestlers, when they were on a tour, were taking pictures with Bobby Lee. And, well, they were doing a tour of Mexico. I think they were in León that time, and Bobby Lee was there, and they were taking pictures with him. And John Cena was wondering who was the guy that everyone was taking pictures with, and everybody got upset at him. And supposedly Triple H told him that was Bobby Lee, and he wrestled in New Japan Pro Wrestling against Tiger Mask and all these other wrestlers. And I kind of thought that was kind of ridiculous I found that hard to believe. It's possible, but I don't think I would scold John Cena for not knowing who Bobby Lee is. Honestly, I think there's certain, like, especially when you've met a lot of these wrestlers and they don't even know who, like, I've met so many wrestlers that don't even know who, like, guys who are huge stars at certain periods and they don't even know who they were. You get that a lot from luchadors where they don't know who, like, they have no idea, like, who a lot of the American wrestlers are. They might know who, like, you know, whoever the big star is from their time period, they might know who that is. Or if they've been on shows with them, they might know who they are. But, like, they're not going to know who, like, I doubt Blue Panther would even know who CM Punk is, honestly, or somebody like that. I don't think that, like when Daniel Bryan was talking about Blue Panther, I doubt Blue Panther knew who Daniel Bryan was. I'm sure when he found out that he was somebody that was a big fan of his, I'm pretty sure Blue Panther maybe looked up, you know, his kids probably looked up a video of him and showed him, hey, look at this is the guy that said you were his favorite his favorite luchador, and Blue Panther was like, oh, cool, he's a good wrestler and what. But I doubt they're like, they don't put too much thought into this stuff. So yeah, I don't really buy that story completely. It's possible it happened, but it's like, you know, it happens all the time. Like, even when you go like I've been to wrestle reunions and Cauliflower Alley Club and all these different places, and I don't know who some of these older wrestlers are, especially if it's somebody that, you know, just has just a regular name. It takes me a while to process that. Oh yeah, I know who that guy is. He wrestled for so and so, and or stuff like that. But if it's like I'm somebody who watches a lot of wrestling and been around watching wrestling a lot, it's very different for a lot of these guys because they are not. Everybody watches certain types of wrestling and are into that, and then you have some guys who, once they become wrestlers, they don't really have the time to watch, you know, a lot of the current wrestling or the wrestling that's going on during their time, during their peak periods. So they're not going to know all that stuff. So I mean, it's possible it happened. I find it a little bit questionable, dubious, a dubious story. And even if John Cena didn't know who Bobby Lee is, maybe now he'll know who it is. So yeah, that's it for as far as Bobby Lee. And like I said, Bobby Lee's still remembered nowadays. Still considered somebody that is still remembered. And like I said, that was his run in 1978. You know, it earned him the moniker La Bestia del 78, the Beast of 1978, just because of how great of a year that was. And people talk about it being so amazing. And you do get that from a lot of wrestlers, where you know, especially in lucha, where there's so much more of a romanticizing certain eras and what somebody did, that you hear like the way they express themselves about what they did during that time period is it comes across like you're like, wow, this is more of like a legendary type of story more than pro wrestling itself. You know, whereas in pro wrestling you don't, you know, when you start talking about somebody's career, it's like everybody's like, what was the attendance for how many people did he draw, and what was the quality of his matches and stuff like that. I think there's so much focus in that. Whereas in Lucha Libre, it's like you have this more of a, you know, superhero kind of feel to the wrestlers. And I think that's cool. So now we are going to talk about the upcoming Triplemania. It is happening on December 12th. It will be streamed live on Facebook and on YouTube. I think obviously YouTube on the AAA YouTube channel, and on Facebook. I know I saw the Auto Luchas and I've seen some of the other shows on Facebook, but I don't know if it's actually I think it's just Facebook Live or something that they stream it live. I don't think it's necessarily going through the AAA account. I'm not really sure, but you'll find it on AAA. They'll have it linked on their account anyways. But that'll be airing. It'll be on obviously, like I said, it will be on December 12th, which is on a Saturday, and it'll air 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern time. There will be no English commentary for this show, and there will be no fans attending this show, unfortunately, because of this freaking pandemic that has continued on. Hopefully, by this time in a few months. Hopefully in a few months this will be over with this, which I doubt. I do kind of believe, like this, we're going off topic, we're going to talk about the pandemic briefly. I do believe that this is probably going to go on through at least June, unfortunately. Maybe the earliest is April, May, But I'm thinking we're in this for the long haul up until June, July. And worse yet is I don't even know if like I think the countries that are more like the United States, England, that have a little bit more of money and can afford to get the vaccine, I think we're going to probably get through this a little bit quicker. It's going to be harder. I don't know if like countries like Mexico and all of these other countries that aren't as I don't know, maybe it's probably going to take them a little longer. I have a weird feeling that I think Mexico is probably going to be a little longer, but I was reading this article where it said that in order for there to be herd immunity, there has to be 70% of the population that gets it, the vaccine, and it can't just be in one area. It actually has to be across the board, like not just the United States. It has to be the entire world, like 70% across the world, so that it'll actually stop. So maybe if Mexico can't get the vaccine quick enough, they might actually ask for those of you that are vaccinated to travel to Mexico to start the herd immunity down there a little sooner. That's the only way I could think about it. But yeah, I can't wait for this to be over with, because I really miss going to lucha shows, even like the local lucha shows. I miss going to that. I'm excited about this Triplemania just because CMLL has done nothing to make me want to watch their shows. I watched the anniversary show, and I thought it was a good anniversary show, but that had Titan versus Soberano Jr., and that was an amazing match. But then these other shows, like as soon as the lineup came out, nothing on them made me want to watch them. I mean, I don't care about trios matches. If it's the same trios going at it again, I have no interest in watching NGD versus whoever the random technical trio is going to be, or Sky Team versus Guerreros Algoritmos. That's not going to make me want to watch this stuff. I want to see some new stuff. I don't want to see Okamura versus and Dark Magic and Vangelis trio. I pay $5 to watch that crap. I'm not gonna pay for that. And that's the cool thing about AAA. I would pay for this Triplemania. I don't know, like I think it would make from if they wanted to make money, it would make sense to do that. But at the same time, AAA putting it up free is gonna make people talk about it. Like if you look at CMLL because they're charging money, and they're charging $5 or so, or 10 or 15 or whatever they're charging, they're not getting any, like, there's no talk about their shows. Like, not even like the minimal stuff that we used to talk about on Friday shows when we used to watch the crappy Friday shows earlier in the year. There's not even that talk. Like, you might get the Cubs fan talking about it and maybe one or two other people, but it's not the same thing as it was like when before the pandemic. Even the anniversary show, there wasn't, and this happens every year when they do the anniversary and they're charging you for it. People aren't really talking about it. And with AAA, they're doing it, and whatever they can make off of YouTube or whatever they're gonna whatever they're making off of YouTube advertising wise, it's worth it for them, honestly, to do this, to put it up for free, because they're going to do that, and then whatever their sponsors will pay, throw in some money. It might not be worth that to them if they were like this huge company and like they were actually getting a lot of orders, people subscribing and purchasing it. I don't know. I don't think there's a lot of people that are ordering Lucha pay-per-views, to be honest with you, just because I think anybody who's ordered Lucha pay-per-views will tell you about the history of how bad they have been in terms of technical issues, and how bad the customer service is from the companies that they've actually used. So maybe it makes more sense just to put it up for free. If it doesn't work, people can't complain about it. They'll still complain about it, but like you're going to be like, it's free. And second of all, it being on Facebook Live and on YouTube, it's going to reach a far larger audience. And, down the road, if you actually want to start doing something where you're going to start charging people, then you could do that once it becomes something that's a little more practical for you to do. For the time being, I just don't see, like, there's no real reason to do it, especially with CMLL. I don't like CMLL. Like if you think what you're paying is going to go to the talent, odds are that's not even going to go to the talent, because they're not even making that much money off of it. And even if it is, it's not going to be this big money maker. To me, I think honestly, that's the way you have to do it, because they're not AAA. I could see doing the charging people, because they've become a far bigger You just look at the numbers. Go on their Twitter account, their YouTube channel, all these things. They have way more followers, subscribers. They have, it's far more. They have a larger audience, whereas CMLL doesn't. And I don't know. Like, to me, I think CMLL has to look at it more as we got to build an audience, build it back up. And then we could probably get back into trying to do pay-per-views and all that. Because I mean, if AAA is not doing it, that tells you how it makes no sense to do it right now. So AAA's show is actually a 7-match show. They actually announced, I think, 3 matches prior to this. We knew of at least 3 of them prior to this. I think maybe even like 2 of them like months in advance. But since they kept changing the dates and stuff, it became a little bit it became a little harder to believe that it was going to happen, but AAA pulled it off. Hopefully it does happen. I think it will. I mean, it's going to happen in Arena Ciudad de Mexico, and like I said, they're not going to have any fans in attendance, so they're going to follow the guidelines that are, the government has for how to handle a show during a pandemic. And they announced 7 matches, and those 7 matches will be. The opening match will be Maximo, Mr. Iguana, and Niño Hamburguesa versus Poder del Norte, which is Carta Brava Jr., Mochocota Jr., and Tito Santana. The second match will be Lucha Brothers defending the AAA World Tag Team titles against Mystices Jr. and Octagon Jr., and Rey Escorpion and Tejano Jr., Phoenix and Pentagon Jr. This should be a good. I mean, these first 2 matches are already better than anything you're going to get in CMLL for the most part. That doesn't involve Titan or Sobrano Jr. The third match is Copa Triplemania. Only this time it is femenil. It is a women's match. And it isn't 30 or 40 women. It is only 6 women in this match. It is Fabi Apache versus Lady Maravilla versus Chica Tormenta versus Lady Shani versus La Hiedra versus Hades. I can't remember how they pronounced it for her. It's been a while since it's been a while since I've seen her. Like, she popped up on the Auto Lucha shows, but she hasn't been that frequent, and she's really good too. But they shortened it. I think that's going to help this concept. I think hopefully if they keep it, I hope they realize that this is the better way to do it. If they do another Copa Triplemania next year and they do it with men, I hope they stick with this, where it's instead of having 30, 40, or 20 or whatever, a large number of wrestlers in Copa Triplemania, stick to just 6. Unfortunately, this is AAA, and I'm pretty sure that because they're only doing this because of the pandemic and don't have they can't really have more people on the show. That's really what's holding them back. But I think this is something they should really do. You can't really, I personally don't see the point in having so many wrestlers on the show because you don't want to hurt people's feelings. You're going to hurt feelings no matter what, honestly. The fourth match will be the reunited Los Psycho Circus. Psycho Clown, Monster Clown, and Murder Clown versus Blue Demon Jr., LA Park, and Hijo de LA Park. Apparently, on Conan's podcast, and I only know this via Lucha Blog's most recent post, there is going to be an angle shown, I guess, on one of the TVs where they talk about how LA Park picked his partners, because it was initially going to be the Ingobernables, but Rush and Bestia will not be available. Rush will be in Ring of Honor during this time, and obviously Bestia's going to probably follow him over there, or they probably figured, why have Bestia on there anyways? So what the story is, LA Park and Conan worked out a deal where each got to pick a partner. LA Park picked his son, Hijo de LA Park, and Conan picked Blue Demon Jr. Of course, Blue Demon Jr. has been feuding with, not feuding, but he kind of was going to start, that was the direction they're going to go with, having a feud with the Ingobernables or have some heat with them or something. They never got around to doing that because of the whole pandemic. So that's the fourth match. The fifth match is the match featuring Marvel characters, and that will be Arcano. I think it's Arachno, isn't it? I think it's Arachno. And Leyenda Americana versus Terror Púrpura and Venenoid. Yeah, I think it's Arachno. I wrote it wrong on my notes. But yeah, that's the match. Nobody knows who these guys are. I'm sure they're AAA guys. And it being Marvel, I'm guessing these guys are going to be very athletic wrestlers. I wouldn't be shocked if it's guys that are already like in the promotion who showed up previously. Who knows? But it should be interesting. I would expect that to be a good match. The sixth match will be Kenny Omega defending the AAA World Mega Heavyweight title against Laredo Kid. And the seventh match will be Pagano versus Chessman in a hair match. And I think Pagano versus Chessman has been a feud that has been building up for well over a year, I believe. So that is something that's really the card itself is, and of course it being Pagano and Chessman, you know that there's going to be a lot of weapons used and a lot of tables broken, fire. Who knows what else is going to be? Chairs, ladders. Everything is going to be used, and they're going to get to do that. And I think that's why, obviously, why they did that as a main event. I know people said that I made a joke about, Kenny Omega is working underneath these the two clowns. But honestly, I think for the most part, if you follow Lucha Libre, they usually do the title match always underneath. It's usually not the main event. They usually kind of put it like you see CMLL, like they'll have like the if it's like the Volador Jr. defending the welterweight title, it's always like the semi-main event. Then they have the main event, like a trios match, to kind of just quickly get that's kind of like, okay, we're just gonna have this match to end the show. But the card itself looks really good. I think you have a shot at having 3 to 4 great matches on here, with the possibility of all 7 matches maybe being good. Just because I think the opener, but you could put Poder del Norte against me and 2 random dudes from the streets, and they'll probably have a really great match because they'll just beat the shit out of us. So and you'll be entertained by it. So I think that, and you're getting Mr. Iguana, who's super over. Maximo also. Maximo, when he's not doing a lot of when he's motivated. And then you have Nino Hamburguesa, and I'm sure these guys, the fact that this is Maximo hasn't been working as much, I'm sure, and this being Triplemania, I'm sure he's going to be very much motivated. So this should be a fun match. The 3-way with the tag teams, you cannot go wrong with those guys. Lucha Brothers, Mysticis Jr., Octagon Jr., and Rey Scorpion Tejano Jr. Those guys are going to be, that match is going to be outstanding. And then the women, I mean, you basically picked 6 excellent women. It's amazing how I think the only one I'm kind of curious how Chica Tormenta is going to do. I think she was out for a while. So, but I mean, honestly, even if she's at 50%, she's still way better than most women. So in a 6-way match, I don't think that's going to be a big issue. Copa Triplemania Femenil, I already think this is going to be the best Copa Triplemania by a lot. Like, it's going to be like at the, when Ultimo Guerrero does the Otro Nivel, where he's like really high, at a high level. That's pretty much what that's going to be. And then like every other Triplemania is going to be like at the very bottom. Like, we're just going to remember how awful those Copa Triplemanias were. But this one's going to be excellent. I do hope that, like I said, I do hope this is something that AAA looks at and says, when we do Copa Triplemania, let's not have so many people. Let's make it limited to at least under 10 people. Actually, if you want to do 10 and then do an elimination match, that would be fantastic. I think that would work even better. There's no problem with that, especially with AAA. I mean, you're not, like, if you're gonna have 1 week a guy on that, the other guys can cover up for that. I think the Psycho Circus match should be excellent as well, because you have LA Park and Psycho Clown in it, and it's gonna be a brawl. The mystery match will be that Marvel characters match. I think it'll be good just because, like I said, I don't think AAA or Marvel are gonna want to have it be like, guys who are, it might be something that if you're not into like high flying, you might not like it. But I mean, if it's that, I mean, it's way better than anything else it's better than what we normally get from CMLL. And then, like I said, Kenny Omega versus Laredo Kid, that should be an excellent match. I think Laredo Kid is going to pour his heart out in this, just because his father passed away, and he's had a lot of things happen in the last year or so, that unfortunate things that have happened to him. So I think this is something that I think he's gonna want to use this as an opportunity to make his name. He was like, had he not gone to that, I really think if he had not gone into that island show or whatever that thing is, I think he probably would have been in AEW. I think they probably would have brought him along with Phoenix and Penta. I think it would have been them three that would have been regulars. Because we haven't seen any other luchadors, but I think they would have added at least one more. And I think he would have been the one that they would have taken. And then like the main event, Pagano versus Chessman, that should be a good hair match. It's worst case, you're going to have a spectacle that you're watching. And that's far more entertaining than a lot of the stuff that you're going to normally see. So I think it's going to be a fun show. Should be something that we'll all enjoy. And, and it's going to be free too. So, I mean, we can't really complain about it, honestly. I'll probably be watching it on the YouTube channel if it's on there. Because I actually, Facebook Live is like, I don't like the, like on Facebook Live, the thing I don't like is that those little like emojis that pop up. I can't stand that. And every single time I sign up, I watch something on there, I always have to remember how to remove that stuff because it takes me a while to remember. But it's not that big of a deal. I mean, I don't mind. I watched a couple of their shows that they've done on I think I watched one of the Auto Lucha shows that they put up on there, like just part of it on there. But then for the most part, it's, I haven't had that many issues on that. And like I said, it's going to be a fun show. So now we get to CMLL, and I know all of you guys have been enjoying watching CMLL all these weeks whenever they have a pay-per-view or those thrilling no fans attending TV tapings that they've been posting I'm sure you've seen CML post, and also Cubs Fan has been recording a couple of those shows. And who does not want to watch Cholo versus searches for random Technico in a match, or the trio of Dark Magic, Okumura, and Vangelis versus random trio of Technicos? Who doesn't want to watch all of that stuff, or who doesn't want to watch a match we've already seen thousands of times? And to be fair, I do think Rey Cometa has really been one of the stars of this pandemic for CML. He's been somebody that's really done, other than that botch in the anniversary. I mean, I kind of wish if that hadn't happened, he could have moved up a little higher. But I think that kind of hurt him, and it, But he's still giving it his all, and he's doing really well. So the big thing with CMLL was the November 27th Leyenda de Azul show. I don't think a lot of people watched that show, unfortunately, because CML continues with these ideas of having tournaments. But there was a 4-match show, and the opener was Princesa Suhei beating Reina Isis. The second match was Felino and Tiger beating Blue Panther and Black Panther. Tiger got the win over Blue Panther, and he actually also pinned Black Panther during the match. Felino then praised them, and then we got this whole story of Felino kind of wanting Tiger to become Felino Jr. We'll talk about that, well, actually, I should talk about it now because we'll just go, because a lot of what's happened with CML, you could kind of connect to these matches. So they come up on the following CML Informa, and Felino starts talking about how he wants somebody to continue the legacy of Felino, and he kind of doesn't want just some random guy to randomly show up and start wrestling as Felino Jr. So he then asked Tiger if he's willing to take on the name of Felino and become Felino Jr. Tiger accepted, so now he is going to be Felino Jr. I think this would be something that could have been a big deal if he had done it back when he was with TRT and was a little higher in the card. Now I'm not really sure, because now even Felino's kind of lower on the card. But Felino Jr., if it's able to get him at least one spot higher, then it's probably worth it. But honestly, like right now, he's really just once the shows, I think it's going to be interesting when CML restarts, when there's normalcy. I really am curious to see what CML is going to look like, because they've kind of held back on debuting some of their guys. They're basically going to debut, there's right now for sure they were going to debut Gemelos Diablos, the new version of Gemelos Diablos. I think they were going to debut, God, I can't remember, Mascarena 2000 Jr. and there was somebody else. I think Cachorro was gonna, Blue Panther's youngest son was also gonna debut around this year as well. So there is those three, and then there's also Hefesto's son, who's supposedly gonna wrestle as Panterita del Ring, Hijo del Panterita del Ring, or Panterita del Ring Jr. So there's already plans for at least 4 or 5 new faces to join CML's roster, which they very much need, because if you're watching these shows, you see how thin it is. My goodness, we are getting a trio built around Dark Magic, Okumura, and Vangelis. Is this the 3rd time I've mentioned this, or the 4th time? That tells you how bad CML is. And they're not even like in the 2nd match. They're like the 3rd match on cards, if you think about the way the placement's going to be. So they need a lot of new talent. But I'm curious to see if Felino Jr. Tiger as Felino Jr. is going to move up to like semi-main event status, or mix it in with those guys. Because he's a way better Rudo than most of the guys that are ahead of him. I would much rather see, because right now where he's at as a Rudo, he gets grouped with Okumura. He's more, if he's not with Felino or Nero Casas, he's with Okumura, Vangelis, and all those guys, Misterioso Jr., and he should be higher on the pecking order. Same thing with like Virus and the Cancerberos; they should be higher on the pecking order also. But they're kind of all grouped together, and it kind of makes it kind of impossible to get out of that group. Felino Jr., maybe as Felino Jr. it helps him move up. I don't know. It's funny because I was seeing I was reading the comments while I was watching Informa, and there were a bunch of people that were saying that Puma King was the one that career became stagnant. And honestly, that's not even true, because if what's really kind of hurt Puma King right now is the whole pandemic. Prior to the pandemic, the guy was traveling, wrestling in the United States, wrestling in Japan for DDT. So, and wrestling in AAA and all on independence in Mexico. So he's actually done a lot better than Tiger has. Tiger has really been just stuck in 2nd, 3rd match on the card. And maybe this will help him move up. And I think also what kind of hurts Tiger is that he's a nice guy. We see that same thing happens with Blue Panther and his kids. The fact that you're a nice guy, it kind of like hurts you, because like how many times have we seen like somebody no-shows an opening match and Tiger will work the opening match? He did that a couple of times. I remember him doing that like once. And you can't, or if they need a commentator, he's one of the guys who actually goes and does it, and they kind of like don't include you like on an anniversary show because they want you to do commentary. So it kind of hurts you that way, unless they're getting paid a lot more for doing commentary, I guess. But hopefully now that him as Felino Jr., he moves up, honestly, because he's a really nice guy. I do think he's a good guy, and he's got talent. I think he's good. I don't think he's really. I think one of the problems that you get with a lot of CMLL guys is that they get so stagnant in where they're at that they kind of become very repetitive, and you kind of just see the same thing over and over again, that it kind of kills them off, and they kind of just stick to the same stuff because they're not really being tested by anybody new or getting the opportunity to move up. So hopefully he does. Hopefully this helps him. Worst case scenario, he teams up with Felino and Nero Casas as the Casas family, and they move him up to the 4th and 5th matches. I think that would help him a lot more than hurt him. The 3rd match on the Leyenda Azul show was actually Ángel de Oro beating Diamante Azul to win the Torneo de Leyenda de Azul, Torneo Cibernético. The order of elimination for that was Hefesto going out first, then followed by Cranio, Blue Panther Jr., Vangelis, Rey Bucanero, Guerrero Maya Jr., Stuka Jr., Valiente, Cancerbero, and Cancerbero got eliminated at the same time. That was then followed by Forastero, Niebla Roja, Cuatrero, Sansón, El Terrible, and finally Diamante Azul. Well, to win this match, Ángel de Oro got some help from Terrible and Niebla Roja, and they are now planning to become a faction. And they're getting a lot of comparisons to the Ingobernables, which is actually not a good thing, because a lot of people are kind of trashing them for being a version of the Ingobernables. But I'm going to defend these guys, because I'm going to tell you something. I think as a version of the Ingobernables, if you compare these guys to the Ingobernables as workers, Ángel de Oro, Niebla Roja, Terrible as a trio blow away every version of the Ingobernables by a long shot. Like even with Sombra on it, they're a way better trio. Like once they start teaming up, they're gonna be a way better trio. Just because Angel de Oro and Niebla Roja are a really good tag team, and you add Terrible, who's a very good worker, they're already better. I think the one thing I would say, the only time I thought they were, when Rush and Sobro as a tag team were excellent, but then you have La Mascara, and La Mascara, that trio kind of stuck to the same routine. And unfortunately, I think that's the problem. They're going to end up doing the same thing that they did with Ingobernables, where they're just going to, if they let them wrestle the way they can, and we've seen Angel de Oro and Niebla Roja, even though they're getting booed, they still stick to the same work. Like they still have good, like their matches are still very good. I think they'll be fine like that. But if they start doing the whole thing where they have to like, stall and they're going to brawl, then I think it's going to drop them off a bit. And I'm sure you could do brawling every so often, but it depends on who you're wrestling. I mean, if you're doing it against, random, technicos, and it's just a beatdown, or you're doing it against a Rudo group that isn't very good, like the Hijos del Infierno, then you're not going to be that impressive. But if you're doing it against like the girls or like a strong technical group, I think it'll be fine. I do think that the bad thing is that they're going to be compared to the Ingobernables, and none of these guys has the level of charisma as Rush. Angel de Oro and Niebla Roja on their promos have been far stronger lately. They've actually been very good at it, actually, but I don't think they're at the level. I actually think they do a better job of being Ingobernable than Mascara ever did. Mascara was always like, I'll do whatever I want, and then like one minute he was doing that, and then the next minute he's being very friendly and stuff like that. These guys at least come across like they're trying to be the jerks, and they're doing a really good job of it, especially Angel de Oro. Niebla Roja still kind of gets every so often where he kind of like goes back, but I think this is a faction that would be really good. But like I said, the problem is they're not going to get any help from the programming department, because what they're going to get from the programming department is they're going to tell them, just do what the Gobernables did, and that's what they're going to stick to. When this group, they should actually like let them work the way they're doing it, let them do their offense the way they're doing it, and then, maybe throw in a cheap shot in there somewhere. Try to let it, like, they got to develop their own style. Also, the other thing is I don't like the name Terrible Chavez, Los Terriblemente Chavez, or Terrible Chavez. That's not a cool name. I mean, they got to come up with something. They got to go to Blue Panther and ask him for a name, because that I don't know what it is with Terrible. Whenever they give them a group, it's either TRT, TCB, whatever group name they want to give them. It's always like the guys TGR. They always give them something like that, and then or they go with the Terriblemente, Guapos, Terriblemente, whatever, because that was TGR, Terriblemente Guapos Reyes or something like that was because it was Terrible, Shocker, and Rey Bucanero. So I think they got to come up with something different, something a little cooler that can fit. You got to think about it as a t-shirt, as merchandise. You got to come up with something that you could push as merchandise, and for right now I don't think that would work. You got to come up with something a little bit cooler for the fans. And I think they're not going to get, they're going to get that. Like I said, no matter what they do, they're going to catch heat from the fans. They were already getting it. Like the Chavez brothers were already getting a lot of negative feedback from the fans. I don't know why, just because they're good looking dudes, but they're good working tag team. I actually think they're really good. I actually think they're better than, like, as a tag team, what they do in the ring. Even when they were teaming with like Soberano Jr., I actually think they're better than the Nueva Generación Dinamita. I actually think with Terrible, they're probably going to be better than that group, just because they're not going to be. I kind of feel like NGD's kind of becoming that group where they're becoming stale, so they're just sticking to a certain move set, and the problem is they're not established enough to do that. And they don't do, like, it's not like they're going to do something specifically special that's going to differentiate themselves. You see, like, the girls Laguneros, they could get away with it because Euphoria is really a really good base, and he's a really good worker as a big guy, and Ultimo Guerrero is a really good worker on his own. And now you have Gran Guerrero, who's become a very good and wrestler on his own as well. Like he's not the level of those two, but he's still like, he's been able to come up with stuff that he can bring into the roster. And then you have Templario also, but I thought that's something that I think that's the one thing I'm not really sure if that's the big concern. The comparison to the Obernales is going to hurt them, and the fact that the fans just can't get, for whatever reason, Lucha fans can't go past the fact that they don't, like, unless you're like Blue Panther type, they can't go past the fact that if you're a good looking guy, they just group you with like Latin lover or like those type of guys. You can't be a good worker because he's a Latin lover, or the type of wrestler like that he's not that good. And I kind of disagree. I think these guys, I think both of them became even better wrestlers without their mask and developing, because now you get to see their faces, and they show a lot, like especially Angel de Oro, he shows a lot more charisma without the mask. The whole saying about how masks cover up charisma, for some guys I would agree with that, but like certain guys could get past it. And I think Angel de Oro couldn't get past it with the mask. But now without the mask, he does show a little bit more of he shows more he expresses himself a little more without it. Then the fourth match for the Leyenda Azul was Ultimo Guerrero beating Euphoria to retain the CMLL World Heavyweight title. This was said to be a great match. After the match, NGD challenged them to a trios title match, which UG accepted. Looks like Euphoria and Ultimo Guerrero are back on good terms. If you do not know the full story behind their rivalry, it all started because, Euphoria was upset that Ultimo Guerrero cost him an opportunity to wrestle on the anniversary show because he got coronavirus. And then that led to him doing a really great Informa interview where he talked about how, Ultimo Guerrero's carelessness in not taking care of himself properly led to him getting coronavirus, and of course that led to the guys not being allowed. Not only did it risk the CML guys health, but it also cost all those guys involved a match, and pretty much that led to them feuding. And I thought that was an awesome, I think that was probably the only, I would think that's been the one feud that we've gotten that is based off of a COVID-19. So that was kind of amusing. While they're now back together again, I think that's probably for the best, just because I can't really see them. I can't really, I think the only thing you could see was maybe Ultimo Guerrero teaming up with Templario and Guerrero, and then Euphoria finding his own trio. That would make sense. But I think for the time being, it makes more sense just to have those guys together. Down the road, you could probably do that. So yeah, that's what we got out of this. Like I said, I wanted to go through the Leyenda Azul, and as you noticed, I was able to throw in some of the news that's going on based off of those matches, or you got some news out of it, because now we get the continuation, which is now the next event, which is happening on December 25th, which is the Copa Junior VIP. They announced two matches. Of course, Guerreros Laguneros defending the CMLL World Trios titles against Nueva Generación Dinamita. Again, I mean, to pay for that, to watch them, a trios match like that, I'm not really sure, especially because CMLL at some point is going to put that on one of those TV tapings and put it up on their YouTube channel. And honestly, the way these guys in CMLL are working right now, they're working at a very similar, very repetitive style, and it's become very, very easy to watch something they might have posted for free on their show, on their YouTube channel, and then it's pretty much the same thing that they're doing on that show that you're paying to watch. The Copa Junior VIP participants were announced, and they are Mystico, Caristico, Mephisto, Soberano Jr., Star Jr., Stuka Jr., Nero Casas, Felino, Angel de Oro, Niebla Roja, Atlantis Jr., and Tiger, using the name Felino Jr., which will be the first time he uses that name in CMLL. That should be fun. I mean, honestly, it's another tournament, and it's a lot of the same guys that you already see. So unless they mix it up a bit, and that's the trouble. they're probably not going to mix it up a bit. Like, imagine if you debut Felino Jr. in this and he wins. That would be freaking great. Because then, like, you could do him versus Soberano Jr. or something like that. And that would be so much better than, like, what's most obvious that's going to happen is going to be Caristico or Mystico going to the final against Niebla Roja and Angel de Oro. And then they probably set up a tag team title match for January. That's what's going to end up. I think that's more likely to happen than anything else. Or Nero Casas reaching the final. I don't see I don't see them like debuting Felino Jr. and him suddenly being elevated just because it's CMLL and they don't do that stuff. But that's the next card. I think that's probably going to be, interesting. Who knows? I haven't decided if I'm going to order that. I haven't been ordering anything. And like I said, even like it being I usually don't really watch CML during the month of December just because there's nothing going on anyways. So should be in that's one of the that's CMLL for you. I'm trying to think what other news there's been. Well, there's also the Pirata Morgan was on Escorpion Dorado's interview show where he drives around in his truck interviewing luchadors, and he was interviewing Pirata Morgan, and Pirata Morgan revealed how wrestling works as far as stipulation matches, hair and mask matches. And this was a big surprise in Mexico because luchadors usually don't talk about this. I think in the United States, we're already so used to it where we know there's going to be a big payoff for somebody that's going to get, the winner of the mask match isn't going to get what the loser's going to get, because the loser's actually pretty much giving away his mask and he's pretty much done as a masked wrestler, and that could really affect his what he could charge as far as from other promoters, not just from CML or AAA or whatever promotion they're working for, but from the independent promoters. His payoff ends up being a little bit lower, or it might even stay the same, but suddenly the value of him isn't the same as him being masked, depending on the wrestler. This was more back then than now. I don't think it's as now. I think wrestlers probably can get away with guys still getting paid the same amount, but he revealed all this stuff. Pirata Morgan revealed all this stuff, and so everybody had jokes. Mystico made a joke about how much Caristico was willing to pay him to throw to give him the Copa Junior VIP match, because he heard Pirata does that. And there were a couple of people asking if Pirata how much did it cost to lose his eye in a match and all this other stuff. But Pirata called, he let it out, and I think he's at that point where he doesn't give a crap anymore. So that became the big thing for him, and it was a story, and I think it was more of a bigger story in Mexico than anything else. I don't think here in the U.S. we're not that shocked about somebody revealing. We went through that in the 90s with the secrets of professional wrestling revealed. When they had TV shows and stuff like that. Now it's like, somebody tells you, did you know so and so lost? And you see that on, and the weird thing is, like, in Mexico they view it as a negative thing, like, he sold the mask to Atlantis for so and so much. He lost it to him, and it's like, that's how wrestling works. You kind of have to have somebody. You can't just, the whole point of lucha, the big three stip matches, mask, hair, and then title matches. And title matches don't really mean crap now, especially when you have a promotion that has, there's in CML there's over 20 titles within the promotion. I mean, it doesn't really matter. So that's about it for this week. I'll probably do a post Triplemania podcast after sometime in mid-December. So check back for that one. Like I said, that show should be fun. I don't know. I guess we'll have more news from that point forward. Hopefully by then we'll have more information as far as the pandemic, what's going on with that. But unfortunately, I think that's the other thing, like with what's going on with the pandemic, there's really not that much news as far as shows go. But every once in a while we get some news from, like, CML and AAA trying to do stuff like storylines and stuff like that for their shows. So we'll definitely do a post Triplemania LuchaWorld podcast, And until then, I will talk to you guys again soon.